Greetings, friends. Today I will tell a story that sounds like a city legend, but is based on a real philosophical and scientific hypothesis. This is a story about a man who again and again a miracle avoided death, and once realized that he may live in a world where death simply does not exist for him. The story of quantum immortality. Michael Watson never considered himself special. He lived in a small American town, worked in a construction company, led ordinary life. But in his fate, there was a strangeness that scared even himself. He was incredibly lucky. At 20, his car flew into a tree at great speed. Doctors said that no one would survive, but Michael escaped with abrasions. A few years later, the fire covered his house. The fire destroyed the whole porch, but his apartment remained untouched, as if someone had circled it. Later, a construction crane fell at work. Colleagues died, and Michael stood among the angry metal, whole and unharmed. At first, he perceived this as incredible luck. Friends joked that he had life like a cat, but over time he realized in this luck there is something wrong, even terrible, as if the world is destroyed around him, and he alone remains to move on. Michael increasingly tormented nightmares. He dreamed of mirrors, thousands of mirrors in which he saw his own death. In one, he fell into the abyss, drowned in the other. In the third, he was shot down by a car. But there was always one mirror where he continued to live. Every year, there were more and more such cases. His life resembled a game where it is impossible to lose, but the game itself turns into torture. Once he accidentally stumbled upon a discussion of a strange hypothesis on the internet. It was quantum immortality. According to theory, consciousness can never survive its own death. In any situation where there is at least the slightest chance to survive, your perception will jump there. For others, you can die, but for yourself, you will always remain alive. Michael read these lines with icy horror. After all, everything that happened to him fit perfectly into this idea. From that day, he began to be afraid of his own life. Each step seemed a trap. In the store, he thought, what if the ceiling collapses now? On the street, what if the car will drive me? But paradoxically, along with fear, confidence came. I will still stay alive. This knowledge was worse than the risk itself. After all, if the theory is true, then he will never die. But what cost? At night, he saw empty cities where there is not a single person. Time stopped. The streets were empty, and he continued to go. In these dreams, Michael felt the last person in the universe. After Michael found out about quantum immortality, he tried to convince himself that it was just a theory. But the more he recalled his past salvations, the stronger the feeling that they were all too implausible. He decided to keep a diary. Every time something unusual happened, he recorded the details. So one evening, returning home, he crossed the intersection. The traffic light had just switched, and he stepped into the green. At the same moment, a huge truck rushed past, touched his jacket with a mirror. People around shouted. One man even ran up, thinking that Michael was shot down. But he stood whole and unharmed. At home, he made a trembling hand in the diary. The difference in tenths of the second. A little more, and I would not be. A few weeks later, the situation repeated. At the construction site where he checked the documents, a piece of reinforcement broke up. The iron fell right next to him, breaking through the concrete floor. The colleagues were sure that it hit him, and then argued for a long time as he managed to bounce. But Michael himself was sure. He did not even have time to move. Reading his notes, he increasingly caught himself thinking, accidents began to occur too regularly. And the worst thing, every time it looked as if reality was adjusted for it. Michael sat over the notebook, reread the lines and thought, if this is not accident, then maybe I really live in some experiment. And all these salvations are just a confirmation that death for me no longer exists. One night, his car collided with a deer on the highway. The car rolled over several times, flashed with fire. Michael saw how everything is scolded into pieces. He heard his own cry. He was sure that this was the end, but he opened his eyes and saw the light of the lamps. He was lying in a hospital bed. Doctors said in amazement, "You are a miracle." Not a single serious injury. Michael realized the theory was confirmed again. Death retreated. That same night, he climbed to the roof of the house. He looked at the stars and the thought sounded in my head, "If I never die, then I was given eternity. But for what?" And suddenly fear began to leave. Maybe all this is not a curse, but a gift? If his consciousness will always find the path to life, then he has an infinite number of attempts to live correctly. Attempts to understand, to become better, to leave something bright after yourself. From that time, Michael has changed. He stopped living in fear. He began to perceive each new day as a gift. He no longer hid from people and events. On the contrary, he began to help others, appreciate every little thing, every morning. He realized that immortality is not an eternal prison, but an endless opportunity. The opportunity to learn, love, make mistakes, and get up again. And if quantum immortality is really real, then maybe each of us is already immortal. We just have not yet realized this. Thank you for watching and listening to this story to the end. If you were interested, support the channel. There are still many such stories ahead. And most importantly, appreciate every day of your life, because perhaps it is part of the very endless road along which we are all together. See you, friends.